Dan Schneider, a former Nickelodeon powerhouse producer, is now suing the creators behind Quiet on Set, the damning documentary that exposed some of the terrible things that children had to do behind his creativity at the network. He's saying that the documentary made him look like a child predator. Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. So if you missed it, it was a few weeks ago, actually more than a few weeks ago. We did this back in March, a recap of the first 4 episodes of the Quiet on Set documentary. We subsequently talked about it again when they released the 5th episode. And we all reacted to some of the damning claims that came out of it and some of the things that people went and looked back on what they watched on Nickelodeon. And they said to themselves, that was very inappropriate for a child to be doing some of the things that they were doing on these shows. And these shows were created by a former actor, you remember him, Dan Schneider from Head of the Class, who ended up going to Nickelodeon and becoming this powerhouse producer there, creating hit after hit for him, for the network. Well, now Dan Schneider feels like he has to do more damage control because after this documentary came out, he did an interview with a former actor, a black actor, and he had him ask certain questions to answer to some of the things that play out in this documentary. It was about 20 minutes, and everyone says, this doesn't help you, Dan. This doesn't help you. Well, TMZ's reporting that Dan is suing the creators behind the Quiet on Set documentary, The Dark Side of Kids TV. So they write this, they said Dan Schneider is taking producers of Quiet on Set to court, claiming they defamed him by falsely portraying him as a child abuser at Nickelodeon and ruining his reputation. It should be noted, if you watch the documentary, throughout the documentary, they would always include, well, we reached out to Dan Schneider and this is what he had to say about this particular allegation or story that's being told in the documentary. You see it throughout the documentary multiple times. But I don't think Dan Schneider at the time of answering these questions realized the impact that this documentary ended up having. So the famed TV producer just filed a defamation lawsuit obtained by TMZ, slamming the docuseries and its creators, including Warner Brothers, Discovery, Maxine Productions, Sony Pictures Television, and others, for falsely implying he SA'd the child actors who worked on his shows back in the day. It should be noted, if you watch the documentary, they never accuse him of it, but what they do highlight throughout the documentary is his creative moment, his writing and the things that he wanted the children to do was inappropriate. It was definitely inappropriate. They never accused him of SAing these kids. But there was a story about someone that did. It's one of those busy days here at Kempire Studios where I don't have time to cook. I don't have time to be thinking about what I want to cook. But what I also don't want to do is go order something greasy or anything like that that's not within my diet. It's summer. Summer is here. I need to look good. So we've partnered with our friends over at Factor. I love their meals. There's such variety that they offer. So eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious ready-to-eat meals. Everything is fresh, never frozen, and it's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. All right, because I'm trying to start to have more vegan and veggie meals, so this is perfect for me. You can also discover more than 60 add-ons every week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and even beverages. Head on over to factormeals.com/Kempire50 and use code Kempire50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box. That's code Kempire50 at factormeals.com. That's code Kempire50 at factormeals.com/Kempire50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. So they said Dan's lawyer doesn't mince words, blasting Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV as a hit job. As you know, Dan created The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly, and Victorious during his tenure at Nickelodeon. All right, so you can imagine the power that he wielded over at Nickelodeon. All of those shows were major hits and still money makers for the network. So in the Quiet on Set, he was the main focus, which he was. Dan's lawsuit alleges the docuseries used manipulative editing techniques to create a false impression of Schneider. You would know, allegedly, of manipulative editing, just saying. So the suit claims that the defendants tried to lump Schneider into the same bucket as two other convicted child S offenders who worked on some of the Nickelodeon shows. He says the defendants did it all for clickbait, ratings and views, or simply put, money. So yes, those things do happen in the documentary where SA is brought up. Drake Bell opens up about how it happened to him, but Drake, multiple times in this documentary, clearly says Dan was the only one that checked in on me in regards to this. And he denied that Dan did anything to him. Okay? So as his lawyer puts it, Schneider had no knowledge of their abuse, was not complicit in the abuse, condemned the abuse once it was discovered, and critically was not a child S abuser himself. So Dan goes on to claim that Quiet on Set used misleading statements and editing techniques in the trailer and several episodes to falsely create the impression that he was a pedo. For instance, the lawyer points to the trailer where his rise and success at Nickelodeon was tied to what the series described as one of the darkest chapters. So the trailer then cuts to a true crime event graphic, falsely implying that the producer had committed a crime against children. The suit claims producers deliberately ignored people who would undercut their narrative. Well, look, in all fairness, we understand how some of these producers and editors try to get creative because they do. You see it here on YouTube, people doing clickbait titles and clickbait thumbnails to capture people's attention. All right? But did they do exactly what he's accusing them of? Well, Dan, I would tread lightly because there are other damning claims against you in here besides the allegations against children. They're talking about hostile work environment, abuses to your subordinates. Schneider does, however, concede in the lawsuit that he was blind to some of his bad behavior toward colleagues, subordinates, and cast members, but insists such bad behavior was not in any way connected to child S abuse. So he's more concerned that he's being made out to look like a pedo. Okay? So he tells TMZ, recently the docuseries Quiet on Set highlighted mistakes I made and poor judgment I exhibited during my time at Nickelodeon, most of which happened decades ago during my early career as a producer working on shows for Colin Robbins Productions. There is no doubt that I was sometimes a bad leader. I am sincerely apologetic and regretful for that behavior, and I will continue to take accountability for it. If you watch the documentary, the only reason why Dan Schneider is no longer at Nickelodeon is because he was pushed out. It was during that whole era of Me Too, and all those allegations against Dan Schneider is a reason why his tenure at Nickelodeon had ended. So still, Dan Schneider says that he has no choice but to take legal action, stating that the docuseries is an attempt to mislead viewers for ratings. He adds, they went beyond reporting the truth and falsely implied that I was involved or facilitated horrific crimes for which actual child predators have been prosecuted and convicted, and then ended up getting jobs at Disney. But that's not his fault. Hey, Disney. I have no objection to anyone highlighting my failures as a boss, but it is wrong to mislead millions of people to the false conclusion that I was in any way involved in heinous acts like those committed by child predators. He says Dan is suing for defamation and seeking unspecified damages, including punitive, claiming he has suffered mental distress and financial losses as a result of the docuseries. As I said to you guys before, if you watch the this is where context is really, really important. I get where Dan Schneider is coming from because he wasn't directly accused of what some of the people that were charged and convicted of crimes against children. However, I beg to differ that some people, including the former child actors, would say that you were, although you didn't do anything to them directly, you made them do things that made them uncomfortable, that now people look back on and see as inappropriate. And let's be honest, abuse takes on various forms. Some may say you may have not done what some of these pedos have done, but you made children do certain things that were of an adult nature, some things that made them uncomfortable, some things that they felt were aggressive and abusive. Like that, not Double Dare, but that other show where they had to do sort of like Fear Factor things. So there are things that you produced and made children do that people might call abuse. So I feel like you should tread very lightly with this defamation lawsuit, because I feel like this might open up a can of worms for yourself. I'm actually surprised that this documentary didn't open up that can of worms in regards to litigation against Stan Schneider. But I'm not surprised, because a lot of people have been still reacting to the Quiet on Set documentary. Did you guys see it? It's worth watching, because if you grew up watching Nickelodeon, you will never be the same after watching this docuseries. Guys, as always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.
You bring the lighter, I got the fuse. You make a